Thanks for joining us today. We're going to run through our P6-Calculator. I'm Nicole Jardin. I am actually joining today from Montreal. So I'm visiting with my father for the summer. And as I said, there may be some birds coming along with us for the ride here this morning. So let's talk about why we put together P6-Calculator. So really, we've been using P6-Calculator with our clients for well over 10 years. I'd say it's probably going on 15, because there are things that people always want that aren't out of the box in P6. And when you have such a tremendous amount of important project data, leveraging it as much as you can is a good thing. So P6-Calculator is a tool that we've built. It allows us to create all sorts of additional configurations inside P6 to add fields and do calculations and flagging and things like that. So I will run through a variety of scenarios. They are food for thought, because when we sell this tool, we always sell some consulting, because some of the items you may need a slightly different flavor twist to what we've already got. Okay, so but let me run through some food for thought ideas. So that's really the common struggle. You don't always have all the pieces that your company needs. So as an example, in resources, your team might want not only the number of hours, but convert it into some sort of full-time equivalent field that you could present to management. So that's something that we've got calculations on right in P6. So not out in Excel or anything like that, but inside of P6. So you can actually see that data, maybe push it into a Power BI report or something like that. You know, that's where our P6 Reporter tool is fantastic. It takes snapshots. You can get the data out in a way you can feel confident, and then you can present that data in Power BI. Now with P6-Calculator, you're storing the field usually in P6, so now you can make sure the data is matching, okay, rather than having all these crazy calculations sitting in some sort of middleware. So that's just one idea that we find is a common struggle. So we want more consistent information, and we want information that's not out of the box, okay? Or flagging, right? If you're working on big projects, it's not always easy or quick and painless, if you will, to find some of the data you're looking for. So for example, another example might be we have a commitment for a startup date or an in-service date. How do you know immediately if it's slipped or not? Okay, so flagging an in-service date that's slipped and having it right on the project. These things can go a long way. So I'll show you again some examples on how we can get some of that consistency. And of course, making using P6 easier, making using P6 across all the different groups in your organization easier. These are some of the reasons we've built some of these calculations in, and I'll show you some examples where we can find loops and detect loops. Now, of course, you can detect loops when you're in P6 as well, but we have a lot of clients who have multiple projects and they need to auto schedule those projects, and you could have a loop in them. So just being able to see those very quickly without having to open hundreds of projects, that sort of thing is another thing that we found P6-Calculator really brings to the table. And then, of course, making it easier to build projects and maintain it. So another one I'm going to show you is archiving. So if you work in a organization that uses P6 to do work order management, for example, this can be the type of thing that the database just keeps growing and growing and growing, which you don't want. Okay, so auto archiving is something I'll touch on. I'll show you some examples there as well. So that's an important piece. And we've got clients that have auto logic building. Okay, so they have certain situations where certain logic needs to be built. So we've automated that. So really, I would say P6-Calculator is a tool that will allow you to do all sorts of additional things, automate different things that you do regularly, and just make your life a lot easier working with P6. Now, because of this tool, you can start to even think about how you're working with data from other systems. Okay, so as an example, and I will show you exchange rate calculations. So if you've ever explored exchange rates in P6, you know that the out-of-the-box functionality is pretty weak. You get the ability to put one exchange rate into the system, which doesn't really work in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion. You often have an exchange rate agreed upon on a project, which could be quite different from another project. So this one flat exchange rate really makes it difficult or virtually impossible, really, using out-of-the-box functionality if you've got multiple projects and you have different exchange rates. So I'm going to show you an example. And as a result of some of the calculations that we're able to do in Calculator, this changes some of your viewpoint perhaps on how you use P6. So we've got, I'll touch on a manufacturing example, I'll touch on a construction or contractor example, where with our calculations, integrating to accounting systems, old AS400s right up to something that's more modern, like Oracle Fusion in the cloud, becomes much more viable. And not only integrating, but using that data now to bring different calculations to the project controls team is something that we've done on many occasions. And it really changes the flavor of what you can do in P6. It augments the cost control capability, the resource control capability, and it augments your reporting capability, okay? So those are some of the examples I'm going to touch on today and show you some live food for thought ideas. Now, before we go any further, I'm just going to ask a quick question just to see sort of the team here today. Are you integrated? Do you integrate your P6? So some of our clients, we have a lot of integration. It's one of the key things we've done from the beginning of Emerald, which is we've been in business now for 27 years. So depending on your situation, of course, it could make good sense. And some that we've done recently, SAP, Maximo JDE, Oracle Fusion, Oracle Financials, and we've integrated to Zoho because that's what we use. So we have to use Zoho projects in conjunction with P6. So we run the gamut. So I'll share that with you. Okay. So the main reason I ask that question is because often people don't explore some additional integration because they say, I just can't manage the data. It's just too much. But integration with P6-Calculator could actually make your lives easier in many respects and also improve the reporting communication that you do with your management team. And ultimately, that's what we're here for. We're here to try and make sure our projects get finished on time, on budget, and if anything is going off the rails, we're able to see it, flag it, and try and mitigate it as quickly as possible. I mean, that is really what we do with P6. So if you're only using P6 for dates, you're not using it for resources, you're not using it for costs, there could be some gaps in the way that you're managing the projects that you could improve with P6-Calculator. With integration or not, but often we found with integration really makes the two, makes the tool much more valuable to the organization and brings more benefit to the company. Okay. Streamlining updating is another key thing that we've done with P6-Calculator. So we have many clients that want to put in a percent complete, get more calculations off of that they can use. Okay, so resource earned value is an example of something that we have in our TAPs, our barcode updating. It is also something that we have in P6-Calculator, where you can put some different percent completes and different calculations can come together. So that's another thing to look at is, are there some gaps in how you'd like to do updating? And as I mentioned, ultimately, we're trying to get this huge set of data that's sitting inside P6 out to the extended team. That's the whole point. It's communicating when people are supposed to be where and what work they've got to do. That's the whole point. So we got to get that out to the extended team so it's usable. So let me touch on how it works. And I will definitely show you some examples in a minute. So basically what we do, and we do consulting when we roll this out, but I'll show you, and I'll give you a bit of a feel for how long some things take. We've got some out of the box types of things. So calculations that do roll ups, roll downs. So if you've ever added a user defined field, you'll know that it sits pretty much on its own at the level you've put it in. So let's say you put it at the resource, or let's say you put it at the expense or the steps. It sits there and it's not usable at the activity, at the WBS, at the project, for example, okay? So we've automated that these levels that we know in the hierarchy in P6 can have roll-ups. So from the bottom, resources, expenses, and steps. We made those usable. They can roll up to activities, WBS, and project. And we also have roll downs. So some of our clients in the drilling space, they share costs to develop a well, for example, or to develop a pipeline that goes along with the well, or to develop a facility that goes along with pushing or dealing with the product that they're drilling for. So usually gas, maybe oil, that sort of thing. So working interest or a split of the cost is a normal thing. So we've got roll downs that work there. And I'm going to show you the exchange rate. It uses roll down concepts and roll up concepts. So I'll touch on those. So those are some of the things that I'll show you. And basically you define the calculation, you define what you need done, and then we automate it, and then it will keep working. Now, the calculations can come in different flavors. They can be automated, so they are essentially looking and monitoring the system and then doing their thing, or they can be manually invoked, okay? So we sort of have two different flavors there, depending on what it is, okay? And again, I'll show you some of those examples and give you some food for thought there. Okay, so I'm going to jump in a second. Let's just make sure there's no questions. Okay, no questions so far. So let me go ahead and jump into P6. Just a sec. Let me just do one thing here. I'll just move that over and share the screen. And hopefully the resolution is big enough. So how's that looking, Shannon? Does it look all right, or should I bump up the resolution?
It's a little small. I do see it.
Okay, let me go ahead and bump up my resolution, and that might make it better. Just a sec here. And let me do that. See if that makes it a little bit better. It's always tricky when you've got a large monitor. Is that a little more
Yes.
visible?
Yeah,
Okay,
that looks better.
let's go with that. Perfect. Thanks, Shannon. Okay, so let's start with an example of archiving. So we've got lots of different archiving functions that we've created in the system. Some clients want archiving of projects after a certain time frame. Some want archiving of activities or work orders after a certain time frame. So I'm going to show you an example of an activity archiving process. Okay, again, keep in mind that this is an example. It doesn't have to be this way. So if you've got a need, but it's slightly different, go ahead and reach out anyways to us, because I'm sure we can accommodate it. So let me jump in and I'll show you the example. So I'm going to use one project. Whoops, let's go ahead and open. Okay, that's the right one. That's good. Let me open a different project. So let me open this archiving 30 days. So you can see here we have archiving anything within coming up within a date range. So you might say once an activity is set to a certain status or has a certain activity code on it and a status, wait 30 days, wait 60 days, go ahead and archive it, okay? Now, what we don't want to do is we don't want activities just disappearing without the scheduling folks having a chance to feel confident in the process. So what you're seeing here on the bottom is a notebook that's letting you know what is going to be archived, okay, and when. Okay, so we have different ways we can do it. So you can see here we've got essentially a countdown clock saying what's going to be archived in the next 3 days, what's coming up in the next 7 days, and what's new. So this is one that I just ran this morning to make sure everything's working good. So of course it's not coming up within the next week. It's going to be put out in the future some amount of days based on what we set up. Okay, so that's an example of it. And once we actually archive it, we start to give you what archived when. Okay, so you'd have a rolling history here of what was removed from the project. So how does this work? Let me show you the general idea of how we do things. So I'm going to copy this activity just to give you another example. So now I have 3 activities. And in this project, I'm just using whether the work order status is approved, canceled, closed, etc. Okay, so that's what I'm using to look at whether something should or shouldn't be archived. Now we've got clients who do it different ways. They don't use a status, they use a date, an actual finish date perhaps. So you can do it many different ways. Now I just copied an activity. So we have 3 activities sitting in this project that are at the right status, the closed status. So I'm going to go back to my project level and I'm going to ask it to re-evaluate which activities should be archived, okay? So I'm doing a manual push to make P6-Calculator go and run this functionality, if you will. So I cleared the last time it ran. I'm just refreshing and it's going to do its thing, and it might take a minute, 2, just depending on what we're trying to run and other things running on the database, okay? So we should see this change from flagged for deletion 2 to 3 based on the step I just did. So let me just do it one more time and give it a second. And if for some reason it's taking a little bit too long, we'll jump to the next one and we can come back. Okay. So once it runs, what we're going to see is this date will be filled in. and we'll see the note change, and we'll see the notebook change as well. Okay, it's taken a long time, of course, during the demo. It's always the way it is. That's what happens when you do live demo. Okay, we'll let it run. I'll try one more time to get it to, there we go. That's what we wanted to see. Okay, so it will start to let us know that there are 3 work orders, or 3 activities in this case, flagged for deletion, and it's keeping track of the work order numbers. If I had added a work order number, which I didn't, that would have changed too. So had I added one, I just copied the activity. So it would have added that number to this list, okay, as well. So I can run it one more time. And then you'd start to see this list growing as you go. Okay, so that's a huge feature for many of our clients who do operations, who do turnarounds, sorry, can't talk today, who do outages, who do shutdowns inside of P6, okay, the work order management. And if you do weekly operations type work, understanding what work orders are done is a big thing, okay. Okay, so that's an example. That's one example. We've deployed archiving, as I mentioned, not only of activities, but we've archived projects as well. Now, we've also done copying projects out of a database into another. So some of our clients have an archived database that they use, and we would push the projects and the activities in to a secondary database. Okay, so we've got lots of different flavors that we've used, again, depending on the requirements. Okay. All right, so that's one example. So let's touch on another. So let's look at some rollups. So we've got a lot of different ways we've done rollups, and I'm going to go ahead and open this project. And whoops, sorry, and I will switch to my rollup layout. Okay, so here I have a list of activities, and I've grouped it by when they're upcoming. So May, June, July, etc. So rollups. We have different rollup functions that people are interested in. We are interested in sometimes having user-defined fields in the resources rolling up. Sometimes we're interested in having a list rolled up to, in this case, the project level. And that's what I've got here. And that's the example I'm going to focus on for the moment. And I'll do the resource rollup in another example that I'll show you. So the user-defined, the costing, I'll do that in another example. So here we have a list. We have a list of resources that are going to be working on activities that are coming up in the next 30 days. So we have clients who have a lot of different resources, and they have a lot of different projects. So to open up all the projects to find a resource, that can be very time consuming. So what this brings is the ability to quickly search on a resource and find it, and then open up just certain projects. So that can be a huge time saver. So if you work with large projects or large numbers of projects, you know one of the slowest parts of P6 is opening multiple projects. So this saves considerable amount of time for some of our clients that use this sort of feature. So let's go ahead and run it. So yeah, I ran it this morning. So let me just go ahead and add another resource just so you can get the idea of how this thing works. So I'm going to add another resource. Let me go ahead and just add this commissioning or P6 loader. And if you refresh it, what you're going to see is this resource will be added to the list, again, depending on the date range that we're looking for. So anything less than 30 days out in the future will show up in this list. So this is, of course, a project that's an activity that should have already occurred based on the dates. So that would add that to the list. Okay, so I think I chose poorly. I think this was already there. So let me go ahead and choose another one that we can add. I guess this excavator. So I can go ahead and add it, refresh it, and then you see it's not there. And then I can ask it to go ahead and rerun. And then often we have a message that goes along with it. Okay, so for example, resource rollup was executed successfully. So we could also clear that message and have it populate each time we run it. Okay, so that's another sort of concept that we've got in the system. So what we should see is that PLEX coming in here. I hope I didn't choose poorly again. Let me just double check here. Excavator commission. Okay, it should be a new one. So let's just give it another minute. It's probably just quite a few projects in here. Okay, so there we go. So it ran it, and I think it's this pipeline resource. So that's was already there. So I think I did choose poorly. Okay, so that's another sort of idea. So we could actually take a field and we can make a concatenated list as we've done here. So we've done this for, let's use a drilling client again. They wanted to see which drill rig was on each project, each well. And of course, you could see it if you open all the projects and you look at the resources. However, to do a very simple list at the project level in Power BI, being able to see it right here, much, much simpler. Okay, so that's another key thing that we've been able to do quite well with Calculator is it allows us to do much better reporting. And I say Power BI, it could be any of your corporate reporting engines. And in that case, the client also had our P6 Reporter tool so that we could snapshot, push the data out securely, and put it into their corporate reporting. Okay, so business objects or Tableau, those are others. BI Publisher, of course, with Oracle tools, Oracle data visualization, Click reporting. So it doesn't matter which one you have. We've worked with just about all of them, and well, not all of them, but some of the main ones, I guess, because there are so many reporting engines. Okay, let's do another. Let's do another example. I've got a whole bunch here, so we'll just try and get through as many as we can. Let's look at loop detectors. So this is a good one to give you some food for thought on how we can automate a variety of things. So we can automate things related to logic as well. Okay, so here I have a layout that's letting me know whether or not the last time it did a run, an analysis, whether it found any projects with loops. So what do we see here? So you can see this is an automated run that's running. It looks like it's running every day, and it runs, it looks like in the morning each day. Okay, so you can see that here. And then it can be run in the middle of the night. The timing can be controlled and set on the actual calculation in the calculator. So these are good, but you can see this one is saying we've got 2 loops. The longest one has 4 activities. This one found 1 loop with 4 activities, and so on. Okay, so it's giving us a little bit of information about what it found. So if I open this project, I can see in the layout that it's flagging the loops. Now these are obvious loops because they're small, but if you've ever worked on a large turnaround, for example, you could, I had one time a fellow I was working with, he was working frantically on building logic and he ended up with 150 loops. He got so angry, he left the trailer, and I think a few choice words were being said. So, you know, when you're building a big schedule, it can be difficult sometimes to see the loops, and this little utility could really help with that. So you see we're flagging them here. We're flagging the starting point of the loop, and we're flagging with a stop sign. So we're using out-of-the-box fields, functionality with user defines, but we're adding some functionality to it. So we're taking advantage of what's in P6 and we're making it more user-friendly here. And we can see the loop here. So I can clear this loop easily enough because it's a small one and it's pretty obvious. So I can remove that logic. And then if I rerun the calculator on it, clear the date, get it to, so I'm forcing it to run again by clearing that date, and it should go down to 1 loop detected, and I probably with 4 activities because these are just the same project I copied a bunch of times here to demo it. Okay, so again, it might take a minute to run. So having some of these just automatically run for you, either once a night or every hour or immediate, you know, every few minutes, it's actually monitoring. You can do it many different ways. Okay, so we'll just see, we'll give it another second here. So some of the other types of automations where we're looking at fields and then putting a message up here would be in-service dates. So we're monitoring the in-service date commitment. We're monitoring the in-service date that we're scheduling right now. We're flagging it with a stop sign or a yield sign if it's a date range. So let's say it's slipped by 1 week. That might be a yield sign. If it slips for 2 weeks, it might be a stop sign. Okay, so that's a very common one that we've put for many different clients. Okay, so here you see it's saying found 1 loop still a stop sign because we've got a problem. And until I clear out those loops, it's going to keep warning me. Okay, so this can be really fantastic for a senior scheduler who's trying to help some of his more junior schedulers. And this could be just a little quality assurance type thing that they can use to go and look. Okay, if you want more quality gate type stuff, join our P6QA webinar because we'll go into even more detail on the metrics that we can monitor with the QA tool. Okay, so if you're looking for something like that, that would be a good one to attend. Okay, and then you can see on the activities, it removes those flags so you can keep going with your cleanup. Okay. Okay, so there's another idea of other types of automations that we do. And again, we have some groups that are in the utility business, electrical utility. They have many projects on the go and many different schedulers. They need to do reporting to their management once a week with dashboards. In this case, in Power BI. They use our P6 reporter engine to snapshot each week. So I'm going to show you some auto snapshotting next. And that requires the schedule to be clean. So loop detection is important. And so that, because if you can't schedule, of course, your dates will not be correct. So loop detection at that level was really important for them. That way, if their backup didn't run for their snapshots, they would immediately go look at the loop detector, see if that was one of the reasons they had a problem with the auto scheduling. Okay. So these two kind of go together, loop detection and auto scheduling. They go together. And I'll just touch on auto scheduling real quick, just to give you the flavor of it. So some of you may have used job services in P6. So in P6, up in the web part, you go into the web and you can set up some automations. So what we found is those can be quite useful, but sometimes they don't meet the needs of our clients. The auto scheduling that you can run every night, or you can run it more often, but mostly people might run it every night. We've had trouble with it. It doesn't always work on all the projects. So even before they got that working a bit better, we've been using auto scheduling for, again, at least 15 years in P6 with Calculator, so that we can make sure, particularly with integration. So often we run integration at night, we get all the data in, we move the data date every day so that our status matches the data we've received. So automating the scheduling, we've done it for many clients, especially those that are very interested in cost control and they want that up-to-date information. So auto scheduling is really a P6 calculator piece where you're able to set up the day of the week, whether you want to move the data date, and how you want the auto scheduling to take place. Okay, so here's just food for thought in some of the typical scheduling points. So in this example, we're moving the data date to 8 a.m. of the day that has been established, which is could be a certain day of the week, or in this case, we're picking the day of the week. So, or it could be the actual day that we run it on. So we've got different flavors. And what day of the week do you want to run it? So again, most of our clients using this do it weekly. And what we're saying is we're going to run it on Wednesday. So in this scenario, we're moving the data date to Monday morning, 8 a.m., and we're doing that on Wednesday, because that gives the schedulers enough time to make sure they've finished their updates for the week. After that, we auto snapshot and push all their data to their dashboards, okay? So that's a very common scenario that we've got, and we leverage our P6 calculator to do that. That's another example to think about. You may have a scenario that would also work well to have more automatic scheduling with that consistent reporting on top of it. Okay, let's do another one. Auto counting and auto creating a list. This one we use a lot with different clients. So let me go ahead and use this auto counting example down here. And I'll open up this project, and I'll open up the matching activity layout that goes along with it. Okay, auto counting. So we have clients that want to count just about everything you can imagine. This example, I'm going to count work orders. So we're counting the unique work orders in this list. So I'll do something real simple, and I'll just put a different number in here. Okay, I'll save it, and I'll go back here to the main screen, and we'll use this project here. So you can see right now our auto counting counted that there are 7 different work orders, and we're giving a list. Again, if you're trying to search your database for a work order and you have no idea where it is, this little feature is super to save time. Okay, so I can search and it'll go find it. Otherwise, you have to open all the projects and you have to go search, which again can be very time consuming. So this is a handy time saver. So I just added a new work order. So I want to run this again. So this is another way we often run our different functions here. We actually let the user say, go ahead, run this. And I'll just save that and refresh. And then it goes off and does its thing. And it should switch to pass if it worked. If it goes to fail, we know we have a problem that crept in and so on. Okay, so this is just another way that we do a lot of our little utilities. So we'll give it a second here and we should see the 211 get added to this. Now, counting things can come in many flavors. We could count upcoming work orders. We can count work orders that were finished in the last week. We can count number of activities completed, etc. Okay, so we see it here. It added the 211 and it updated the count to 8. Most clients don't use a notebook, but you could have a notebook at what day you ran what and how many there were. So you can have different statistics. Okay, so we've got a lot of different flavors. But this kind of thing we do a lot of, counting a variety of things. So activities started and stopped, or started this week, completed this week, in progress this week, work orders in progress, work orders added, you name it, we count it, and this is how simple it is. So building a little function like this usually is pretty quick in terms of consulting time, maybe 1 hour to build it, 1 hour to test it. Very simple. If it's a little more complicated, it might be 4 hours to build it and a few more hours to test it. Okay, so we've got tons of different counting functions that we've deployed with different clients out there. Okay, so this is just a simple food for thought example. Okay, let's try and squeeze in one more. Yeah, let's do our foreign exchange rate or multi-currency. So this one also we've done for many clients that wanted to be able to do some cost control in P6. So they didn't necessarily have another full-blown cost control system. And mostly always we've been in an integrated mode. Okay, so they're integrating data every night into P6 usually, and they want immediate cost control features, flags, etc. in the system, and including foreign exchange rate. Okay, so if you're working around the world, you're reporting to your management in your own native currency, but you need to report to clients in different currencies. This works very, very well. Now we've done exchange rates that are fixed to the project, which is the example I'm going to show you here, or can be variable to the activity. Okay, so we've got that as well. So you can have both. This, I'm just going to show you one example. Again, food for thought on how this works. So let me open this project up and we can touch on what you're seeing on the screen. And I'm going to do a split screen horizontal to show the project window and the activity window at the same time. So you can see kind of what's going on. So let's and this includes the automatic roll up and automatic roll down functions that I mentioned. So let me touch on those as well. So we've got a lot of fields here. So let me kind of orient you as to what you're seeing. So we have a variety of projects and we have the currency of the project and we have the currency of our accounting ledger or reporting, corporate reporting. Okay, so we've got both here. So this particular example, it's being run in Great Britain pounds, in the pound, and our corporate reporting is done in Canadian. So the exchange rate from, I just put in a random number. This is not necessarily the current exchange rate. We're saying the exchange rate between GBP and CAD is 2.5, okay? That's one factor that we put in. Now, a lot of our clients want to also manage from the cost of doing a scope of work. They want to manage the rate that they're selling this to the client. So that would be a contractor scenario or a manufacturer scenario most often. So usually you've got the base cost and then you add certain things on it. So in this example, I've got 20% overhead, 10% profit. So that's being added from the cost to the sell, okay, those two percentages. Now, again, I'm showing it as a bulk, but it doesn't have to be, okay? So you can have an override on certain activities where you might want to get 100% profit, and on another activity, you might prefer to just put it at 5, okay? Maybe it's a change order and you're negotiating and you want to show some good faith. So you can do many different things. Again, I'm just going with the more simplistic example. So we see the overhead total and we have to see the profit total. Now these are being rolled up from the lower level items, okay? So we're getting the roll-ups from these fields in here. So these are the activities and they're coming from resources and expenses. So those are the two places where all the costing is done in P6. So they're happening automatically. That's the huge benefit here. You don't need to have a separate system. You don't have to do a bunch of calculations in Excel. You use the base piece, which is the cost, and it automatically does the roll-ups. Okay, so that's the key thing here. So this is getting maybe a little squishy on the screen, but hopefully you're getting the idea, and I think I can, come on, so fussy. Okay, I can't split it a little. There we go, that's what I want. Let me try and split it a bit better. There you go. Okay, so the roll-ups are all coming from the lowest level, and they're being totaled up, and then they're being put into the activities, and they're being rolled up and totaled up into the top level, being the projects. We also do the WBS, so it's the same thing. It's just taking the values and putting them up the food chain, okay? Now, the key thing here is we can merge resources and expense user-defined fields. So that's something that is not out of the box in P6, and we have that built into Calculator. Okay, so we can take the overhead and profit from the expense, the overhead and profit from the resource, all the resources, total them up, come up with one number and roll that up. So that's huge for many, many of our clients that want costing or full-time equivalents or other calculations that you want to do in P6, okay? So if I changed the overhead and profit number here, if I changed it to 30%, I change this to 1.5, I change this to 25, whatever we want to do here, I can save this, rerun it, and it'll go ahead and make all the calculations at the lowest level and then roll them back up, okay? So it could take a bit of time depending on how big your project is and other things running in the system. And then we'll see these all change. That's essentially how this can work. Now, the other thing that many of our clients struggle with is costing at the resource level. So while this thing is running, let's touch on costing at the resource level. So I think actually what I'll do is I'll go back to the merged screen for the moment just to touch on resources. So if you've tried to do costing with resources in P6, especially if you're a contractor, you might find that it's limited because we only have 5 different rates, okay? So for our clients that want to do a lot of costing, we introduced rate user-defined fields. So we could allow them to do different rates on every project. By doing that, we use P6-Calculator to take advantage of the fields and to calculate all the different rates, okay? So this brings a lot more flexibility to P6. So if you're a contractor and you're finding it a little limiting, we've already solved this problem with other clients. So in this example, I can have different rates for different projects. So here it's $15. My profit for this particular resource is different from my profit and overhead at the project level. So we've done this at this sort of granular level, and it works exceptionally well. And then same thing, you'd get the resources calculating rolled up to the activities to the project, okay? So we've solved that sort of scenario for many clients as well, okay? This is taking a little longer than I was hoping, but it's probably because it's a reasonably good size project. I should have pared it back. So what you would see is these values changing, and then off you go. So it's got quite a bit of heavy lifting to do in this change. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. Just so you can understand the different types of things that we've done with Calculator. Now, let me just see if there are any questions. I don't see any. Shannon, did I miss any? I don't see any. So hopefully that means, you're kind of getting the idea of what I'm showing. And again, you need to really look at it as a food for thought sort of thing, because really there's many different things that can be done with Calculator. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint, Shannon?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and wrap up because I've just about out of time here for today. And we did a deep dive, showed you a few scenarios. I know it's a bit of a drinking from the water hose, a bit quick, but let's touch on some of the benefits that we've seen. So someone's asking, can you show a typical dashboard reporting? So the dashboards that I showed you, of course, were just in P6. If you want to see more about different reporting, I would encourage you to join our P6 Reporter webinar. That will give you a lot of good examples. Shannon, I don't know if we have any coming up. Maybe you could share it in the chat, but definitely if you go to our webinar schedule on our website, you'll see any upcoming ones. And we also email that out, so you can look from that point of view. Because there's so many different things. So you'd want a dashboard, project level data, activity level data, resource level data, responsibility, geography. So we've done a lot of different dashboards. So join that. So in terms of the usability, hopefully you got the idea that it's pretty simple to have a layout that helps you see a particular thing. So it's very reducing manual effort, very important. If you have even 5 schedulers on your team, absolutely hugely important. If you have 50 that have to open projects regularly, you know that that can be quite time consuming, or search for things, very time consuming. If you ever had to search for a work order, it can be very time consuming. Okay, so think of that. That's a big piece here. And the efficiency, especially when we can get consistency across the group. When we're consistently publishing out project status, management gets much more valuable data. That can save thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars if you're making corporate decisions. So increasing that efficiency is a big thing. and the accuracy. We have some clients who use certain pieces of the data that is automated to count safety information. So number of resources, full-time equivalents, up into safety dashboards. So that's another thing that I didn't show an example of particularly, but that we've done. So again, if there's something you're interested in, you're not quite sure how to do it in P6, just reach out. That's really the best way because there are so many different examples. So I touched on some of these different case studies. So I mentioned the data date moving, the auto scheduling, making sure scheduling is happening so you don't have any straggler projects, straggler activities. Very important if you're dealing with large programs. So very, very important. So I touched on that. And really the key here is saving time. And even if you save half an hour a day for hundreds of schedulers, that cost adds up very, very quickly. So calculator is not that expensive a tool. It can range from a few $100s to a few thousand if you're doing a lot of automations in a large organization per month. We sell it per month. It's a subscription-based tool. And it's by the number of automations. So we count it by points, okay? So if you only need a few things, it will be cheaper. If you're doing lots of things, it's a little more expensive, but our clients using it say they save, the return on investment on the savings of time is there easily, okay? So again, reach out. I showed you the foreign exchange rate and I mentioned the multi-currency. I mentioned the way that the overhead profit type calculations can take place, the resource calculations. So the real results, being able to do that cost control daily, if you're integrating daily, weekly, or monthly, depending on how often you're doing the integrations. And cost control down at a little more granular level. So we can also do multi-currencies to activities. So if you buy certain things in from China, perhaps from Japan, perhaps from other parts of the world, and you want it all to come into one currency for reporting, we've done that as well. Okay, so so I think I've touched on quite a few. We've got a lot of examples, and I think the best thing is if there's something you're trying to do or things that you think would benefit your team, reach out. That's probably really the best advice I could give. And hopefully we can help. And if we haven't done it already, I'm sure we can whip something up pretty quick. We're working with a drilling company right now. And in the last few weeks, we've built a few calculator things to do automated logic, to do automated project copying for scenario building. So, you know, these are things that we're doing regularly with our clients. And we've been doing it for 27 years, as I mentioned. We've always had programmers on our team from the very beginning. So we have not only P6-Calculator as a tool, but we've got a very strong, probably, I'm going to brag, I think, a little, strongest toolkit for P6 out on the market. We've got the QA tool I mentioned earlier, the reporting tool I mentioned earlier. We have TAPS and CAPS, which are updating tools. TAPS is a barcode updater. CAPS is a tabular grid updater on the web. Very easy to use, so your PMs can do the updating. Push them into P6, and then the schedulers can make sure the updates make sense, okay? TAPS is a barcode updater. You scan two things and updates come in. So super fast. And we built that for our turnaround clients in particular, but you can certainly use it even in a capital projects environment because it can update steps, which you can use for physical percent completes. Okay, so I'm sure I'm missing some other tools. P6 Loader, that lets you load data in and out with Excel. So we use that. That is our best selling tool. We use that with so many clients for so many different things. So go to our webinar series. That's really the best suggestion, and see if there's some things that are coming up and join those other webinars. And we put this webinar at a different time zone, so we're going to try and do more of them at this time to capture some of the time zones that aren't so easy to overlap with Calgary. Okay, I don't see any questions yet, so hopefully that means the webinar was clear. But certainly if there's something that you think of after, feel free to reach out and let us know. I'm going to put one more question up. Let us know if you do want us to reach out to you specifically. You know, if you saw something of interest and you want to talk more in depth, let us know if you want us to call you or not. If not, that's fine. Just go ahead and answer, and all good. You might know another client or another colleague that would like us to reach out. So certainly just let us know. We don't want to be bugging you if there's something not immediate that you're looking at. Okay, so thanks for answering that. And that just helps us make sure we're following up appropriately. And I've got my email there. Shannon, you want to throw Donna's email in there as well, because Donna is our regional manager in the Philippines. And if you're in her time zone, it might be easier for her to reach out as well. So we can throw Donna's email up there as well. It's Donna U. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Shannon. Okay, so I'll stop recording there. I'll stay